Hi everyone and welcome to today's webcast. My name's Toby and I'm joined by my colleagues Dan and Sohrab, and we're going to talk today about unified intelligence, both as a category and a technology. So we're going to talk in quite a lot of detail about what unified intelligence is, how it applies in the real world to critical operational environments, and of course we'll cover how it works. But before we get into it, I just want to, ask Dan and Sohrab to introduce themselves briefly for our audience. So, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm the CTO at Entopy. My role in the company is to look after the company's technology vision. That can be anything from architecture, our technology stack, R&D, and delivery for customers. I'll pass over to Sohrab now.
I'm Sohrab. I'm the CDO here at Entopy. I lead on the data strategy and I work very closely with Dan day to day.
Great, thanks, guys. So, as I said in the kind of intro, we're here to talk about unified intelligence. From my perspective, our opinion is that this is a new category. We're seeing this kind of emerge and advance and accelerate, which I think is kind of going hand in hand with adoption of AI in real world environments, to be honest. But it's very much where Entopy's sort of positioned itself. Our goal, of course, is to help operators, to support them with decision making in high consequence, kind of complex operation environments. So we work with ports, logistics companies, critical infrastructure, and so on. But we wanted to sort of take the time to really sit here and explain and discuss what unified intelligence is, because I can't count on two hands the amount of times I've been in conversations where what we're talking about has been likened to something that it's not, or we have to kind of explain in huge amounts of detail, what the category is, how it's defined, why it matters, and so on. So that's what we're here to talk about. I suppose as a starting point, it would be quite cool actually if we could just, maybe if I start with you, Sohrab, just ask you, what does unified intelligence mean to you?
Yeah, so I would say from my perspective, it's just bringing loads of data sources into one place and making them make sense to our clients. But those data sources could mean anything. They could be machine learning models that spew out data. They could be open source data sources or their internal sources. But it's just building that ontology from experience that we have at Entopy to be able to provide that intelligence. That's how I see it.
So it's very much a sort of umbrella kind of layer that brings data from lots of different places and makes it
make sense, and even bringing those data together and generating new data from them that's just come out of these data sources.
And why do you think it's getting why do you think it's kind of getting so much traction? Or maybe unified intelligence isn't, but what you've just described is what many organizations are trying to achieve. That's their kind of almost North Star. We want to unify all of these data sets across our complex operation. Why do you think that's kind of coming to the fore now?
I think over the last 10 years, IoT devices have been around, and these large organizations have been thinking that's where intelligence lies. So they've spent invested in those devices and have collected years of data, some of them, and it hasn't given them the results they wanted because it wasn't the raw data themselves. It was, like I said, it was the ontology and the way you connect and bring in additional sources to be able to make it valuable.
So it's almost like we've gone through the exercise of deploying hardware to generate more data. The raw data, the data that's coming, kind of being outputted by these devices is cool, but it's not really delivering what people wanted it to. The value is in actually the derived outputs from putting these data sets together. Hence,
especially now that we have the AI technology as well to work with, which obviously gives us a boost. But that's, I think, where analytic softwares may have been useful in the past, just trying to make sense of some of that raw data, but not actually use that raw data to generate actual unified intelligence.
That's cool, and we'll touch back on on analytics software specifically later on. But Dan, if I can come to you, so from your point of view, I suppose same question. What does unified intelligence?
Yeah, Sohrab's covered that really nicely. Actually, for me, it's more about the intelligence piece. That's very much about how we do stuff.
Okay.
Bringing the data together and stuff like that. But it's the intelligence that can bring up.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have an ecosystem or something like that, company A, company B, company C, all different data, you bring all that together. Not just bringing it together is not the clever bit, that anyone can put loads of data into a data lake. That's fine. It's until you can bring that all together with ontology. Once we deploy Entopy ontology, you can bring that all together. And then the intelligence we can derive off that. So whether we then model some of that data to drive predictive outputs, which is then plugged into the real-time data. So then that can start to drive real intelligence to the companies. Start to say, this is going to happen, this is going to cause this to happen, this is going to cause this to happen. And so they can act on that.
And it's that causality, it's that understanding of consequences which empowers operators to make much better decisions.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's not just knowing that something's going to happen, it's knowing the consequence of that happening.
It is, exactly. So not just this is going to happen today, it's this is going to happen, which is going to cause this to happen, which is going to have a knock on here, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Which can make the whole ecosystem behave better.
And I suppose in the world of AI, you mentioned predictive output. So we've got another webcast that speaks specifically about our AI agent. And within that, we talk about micromodels, and there'll be other webcasts that cover those topics more specifically. But in the kind of new age of AI, where businesses are rushing to essentially do what you've just said in terms of bring all of this data together, and do what you've just said in terms of turn that data into intelligence and identification of consequences, I suppose ontology is a really, really key aspect of that.
Yeah, most definitely. The amount of times I hear people say, oh, we've plugged some of that data into Copilot. I'm just like, okay, you've plugged a piece of that data into Copilot. You need the ontology to be able to look over the entire estate, if you like.
Yeah.
To then be able to pull on the right data at the right time, to then give you a good output. It's not just about plugging it into an LLM.
So does when we talk about ontology, first of all, in really simple terms, Sohrab, are you able to explain to me, or are you our listeners, kind of what is ontology in really simple basic terms? Because I think this term is misunderstood. Again, it's an overused play now in the data world. In your world, in your mind's eye, what does it mean?
Yeah, you're right. When someone says the word ontology, they just think of like a hierarchical chart, sort of, which it is in part.
Yeah.
But I think it has multiple layers that you need to dig into. One is the technical experience that we bring, knowing how and when to link these sources together. Another is we've learned how to listen to our clients as well, because bringing understanding how their operations work, also knowing the technical expertise of how to link these data sources together, I think that's the hand-in-hand experience that develops this and makes our ontology so valuable. Is knowing how to link data may not always just be great, because the end result may be meaningless to the operator. Knowing what the operator wants and what data you have and how to structure this to be able to provide that end result, that's where the value is. And I see that as ontology.
So, because you see the kind of ontology 101 kind of videos, and you're right, they're just hierarchical charts. They're sometimes enormous. I mean, we've been in situations, haven't we, where these ontologies have become basically unusable because people have tried to literally attribute data, every single aspect of data, and the labeling is so granular and it's so binary. But what you're talking about is actually getting underneath how our customers' operations work and baking effectively the operational physics of their business into their data.
Exactly, yeah.
And I suppose that then starts to help us build context, which from an AI's point of view, you mentioned plugging this data into Copilot, it won't necessarily just be able to go off and retrieve the information. It needs to understand where your question's coming from and how the data maps to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd need to, if you was doing that with an LLM, you would need to give it the context along with the ontology, really. But where people fall down with ontology for me is they make the start too rigid. You can have a very rigid ontology where it's all about, for example, it's all about cars. And then when you want to start adding vans into that or something like that.
I remember.
Did you remember? We've had that before.
Yeah.
And then the ontology. It just grows and grows and grows and grows. You need to have a flexible ontology.
Yeah.
That you can attribute stuff into this in real time.
Okay.
So that's what makes us different to a standard ontology off the shelf.
And is when we talk about things like real time intelligence, so delivering decision intelligence in real time, and then we talk about ontologies. You just mentioned kind of off the shelf ontologies and then being quite rigid and so on. Is real time intelligence something that is more tricky, I suppose, to bake into an ontology? Is it something that has to be considered, or?
It depends. So, for example, a machine learning model that has ontology on its own before it starts, generating data. But it's more difficult to be able to inject live data into a model that's already been cooked, as they say. So this is what we do. We see a machine learning model as a IoT device. So we take the generated data, but we also take data from live IoT devices that are generating real life data. And our ontology determines which of that data to provide the operator at what time to give it value.
So the ontology is effectively, it's almost making decisions around what data to put in front of people. It's the framework as to how that's decided.
Yes, and this is something that we've spent many of our years cracking.
Yeah, no, I understand. Because you, Dan, mentioned rigid ontologies and so on. I suppose one of the things that really captures my attention every time we talk about this, we know the real-time aspects, what Sohrab's just mentioned in terms of new data coming in, having to decide where that new data comes in and so on. The actual model itself having its own ontology and so on. But also the flexibility, because every time we're in these kind of scenarios, things change all of the time, right? So there's a real need. If you're unifying data across an ecosystem to deliver this unified intelligence, I suppose you have to have that flexibility baked in.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially when you're doing it across an ecosystem, someone can have something labeled something totally different in a totally different part of the ecosystem. You need a way of unifying that. So that's what we bring to the table with our ontology.
Brilliant. Cool. So now kind of digging a little bit more into the intelligence side of things. So we've just touched on real time. I suppose my next question would be, from an Entopy perspective, I want to talk about decision-making horizons. So again, I've been in conversations with people quite recently, actually, where the decision they want to make is a transformational decision whereby they are going to build infrastructure. It's a one-time decision or a 1 in 10, 20 year decision. Millions of pounds is kind of going to be invested into this. And they want to understand, where to best or how to best get the most out of that infrastructure or that decision. They want to decide which infrastructure to back or so on. That's what I would call a transformational decision. And then the decisions I see Entopy interacting with on a day-to-day basis are more kind of real-time and tactical. I suppose I just wanted to ask the question, in terms of decision-making horizons, what's your view in terms of where Entopy is best placed? And can you give any kind of examples from your experience of what we mean by decision-making horizons and how someone listening to this can decide whether actually what they need is what we're talking about?
Just so I understood you correctly, you talk about like kind of the lenses that we always have.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, it depends who the stakeholder is that's going to be using the intelligence. And within one organization, we do create the overall software or intelligence. So multiple stakeholders can use it differently. So for example, operators, we normally say within a 24 to 48 hour window. And then we have more strategic decision making people, C-level, that want to, like you said, whether do we spend money for some sort of infrastructure or not.
I get it. I think what you're kind of saying is the technology that we deploy is applicable in lots of different scenarios and to lots of different people, both, people wanting to make real-time operational decisions, people wanting to make tactical decisions, but also people wanting to make those kind of strategic decisions. But if I just pop to you, Dan, I mean, the types of modeling that's required to support each one of these decisions, I suppose it varies quite a bit.
Yeah, it can vary quite a bit. Obviously, Entopy tends to work better. Well, not work better. Entopy tends to be best placed within that real-time sort of near-term period as where you get the most value. But however, that can ultimately lead into the longer-term stuff because you're building up all the data as you go along, right?
So
it can automatically lead into, actually, I need to test out this scenario. Everything's there. That can be done within Entopy.
So let's just unpack this, right? So you're talking about so why are we better in the near term, real time kind of area?
Yeah, because that is I don't know why we're better there, but that is why it is. We're very good with the real time stuff. We're very good at producing this stuff really quickly as well. The way our system's built, the way we can inject real time data into the system is quite unique.
I think it's because operators generally have the most critical job roles within an organization. A C-suite level personnel can take its time to write their strategy. You know, they have that opportunity to think and pause. But an operator doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So this is where we get, like I agree with Dan, we give the most value because they make insane decisions, you know, and they've got a matter of minutes or hours to make a decision. Otherwise, the whole critical infrastructure could start to fall apart. And that's where Entopy provides most value.
Because it's about bringing together the right data at the right time with accurate, trusted predictions to a moment that has high consequence. Whereas the longer horizons, perhaps you can take a little bit more time. You can bring more people into it. So it starts to become a bit more appraisal as opposed to decision intelligence.
Yeah, and when we say it, we make the biggest impact in the shorter time, as in towards the operator side. We don't mean money wise, we mean impact wise, because possibly the strategy level could mean significant more funds could be involved money wise.
Yeah, most definitely.
But the impact of decision making on a critical point, that's where Entopy, I think, shows its most value.
So to run through the lenses, so the top lens, or we always talk about it in a sort of a downward stack, right? So the top lens is the real-time operational decisions, typically frontline operators, high consequence decisions, loads of pressure, need as much information as they can to guide that decision in the moment. 24, 48 hour horizon, typically frontline ops, high consequence, high decision frequency. Next layer down is more tactical, sort of mid-term planning, I suppose. So we're now looking a few days in advance. Perhaps we're trying to get ahead of something that we know is going to happen. So we're actually now starting to use the unified intelligence, use the unified picture to actually shape what our tactics are going to be tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So in maritime operations, this could be, you know, something like, how are we going to manage this sequence of vessels? Or it could be from a vessel's point of view, what steaming speed am I going to sail at? A kind of critical, road infrastructure. It could be staff planning. It could be operational intervention. And then the strategic, we can support in the appraisal because, like you said, Dan, we've got those two layers. So we already have the unified picture. That unified picture is updating in real time. So it becomes a real asset to support those strategic decisions. But as you've said, Sohrab, you know, those decisions are typically made more by committee. It's less about getting the unified picture to one person at the right time. It's actually about providing a level of intelligence that contributes to a wider appraisal scenario. I suppose the other distinction I want to draw, because sometimes we get drawn into the whole physics model versus real-time ops unified intelligence model type debate. So by physics model, again, I want to be clear in terms of what I'm talking about to our audience more than anything. So these are the models where they're using laws of physics, typically built by subject matter experts, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of rules, lines of code programmed into these things, but they are static models that help to capture three-dimensional or four-dimensional aspects, three-dimensional aspects of a landscape or operation. So brilliant for kind of what how structurally sound is this bridge, for example. but those models wouldn't necessarily apply particularly well in what we're doing. Why?
No.
I suppose it comes down to the fact that they're static. They're once in time. They're not updated.
That's the thing, yeah. And they're fixed to where they need to be as well. For example, like a landscape one, like you said, the bridge one. It's very hard to drop that into somewhere else. So when you're talking around an ecosystem, it's not very flexible.
Yeah.
That's
And they take years and years to build as well, I suppose. These models.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course. So let's say we had to develop an AI model in house. Usually, what we're talking, 2 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on the type of model. With a physics-based model or another type model like that, you can be talking years.
Yeah.
We don't have years.
And you're making a big bet at the start of that project that you're building it in the right place.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
And one of the things that we've noticed, particularly with the ecosystem, the main one that you've been leading has been a journey, hasn't it? Right? So we deployed a micro model, an AI micro model, so not a physics model, an AI model to solve a specific part. And then we did that. And then the guys went, actually, can you move it in this direction and build models over here? It's a continuous journey, right? So unified intelligence isn't a point in time.
No, definitely. Yeah, and I agree with what Dan said with these physics models. This is what everyone used to use, but now that we have the capability of AI machine learning models, which we can spin up much faster, test them quicker. If there are any imperfections, we could go back and adjust them quickly rather than waiting years to understand and find out, oh, this isn't actually going to solve our problem. But saying that doesn't mean they're made redundant. So at Entopy, we're very clever and we're very creative.
So modest.
So what we've done is we start with the machine learning models, and then the data that generates, we take that and create physics models from that. And then that could go into another model. There could be an ontology of model, physics model. So things like that, we play around with everything.
I think that's probably another webcast, but I think the central point is our core is real-time ops, tactical decision making, those kind of top two spheres. We can support the strategic, and there is a material difference between a live unified intelligence capability and static, monolithic but static models.
And we would, when you're doing it in terms of like an ecosystem unified intelligence play, that would only ever be a data input into that system anyway. You could never build the entire ecosystem with a physics-based model.
Why?
Because it would only cover a certain aspect of that. You couldn't do the whole thing. You'd have to have.
Is that because it just takes too long?
Yeah, it takes too long. You'd have to say it was. This a port's a good example, right? Because you've got ports, you've got operators, you've got shipping lines, and then you've got multiple other ports. So they all involved in that thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got towage companies.
I suppose the world's an ecosystem.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. You can't build a physics-based model on every single point. You need data from that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Well, not with the amount of time you would need to do it. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So that's why we might decide that we want to take a physics-based model. But we would take that as an input into the overall unified intelligence system. We might take a flood-based model for something like that, for example. But that would just be for that point. That wouldn't be for the entire intelligence that we offer. That would just be one data input. Like Sohrab said earlier, we take inputs from multiple IoT devices, micro models, so on. We would take that as just one input into our system.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all of this comes back to our ontology again.
Yeah.
That's when we say, what does ontology means for us? It's this, bringing different types of data from different sources, physics, machine learning, IoT, all of that, and bringing that all together to be able to provide that operator with that critical decision-making tool.
So if someone's listening to this, they've come on because they want to understand unified intelligence and they want to walk away with a mental model. What I'm hearing is focus less on the technologies. Doesn't really matter which type of modeling you're using. Typically, we've focused on real time, but
of course,
focus more on the idea of I want a unified picture that provides a joined up picture of what's happening and intelligence. So it's not just telling me what's happening now or what's happening in the past. It's telling me what's happening in the future and what the consequences of that happening in the future are.
Yeah, exactly.
So that moves me nicely into talking about a couple of other things, which is what we are not, right? So It's very easy to understand how unified intelligence, or as I sometimes call it, operational intelligence, could fall into the bucket of dashboards, Power BI, analytics, predictive analytics. I want to demystify some of this. I want to debunk it, right? So if I could start with you, Dan, I want to start with analytics.
Okay.
And then I'll come to Sohrab for, I suppose, predictive analytics, which is the next space. But if someone were to say this is analytics, what would your response be to them?
I would say you're wrong.
Okay.
Look, you will be able to get some analytics out from a unified intelligence tool. That's just a given. You will get some analytics out.
So in your mind, what are analytics first and foremost?
It's historical patterns.
Okay, so it's taking a load of data and looking at what the trends
and looking what that trends has happened in the past and stuff like that. And obviously, you can take that data out of our system.
Yeah,
of course you can, and then we can build that. We can build analytics charts and stuff like that out of that. That's not a problem. But unified intelligence is about what's going to happen and what has happened at the right time. So right now, this is just about to happen. What do I need to do for this?
You've sort of stolen the question from Sohrab, but I'm going to ask you about predictive analytics as well, because it segues on.
Yeah.
So if analytics is looking in the past, looking at real data, what's happened in the past, what's predictive analytics?
It's look about what's about to happen.
So it's basically forecasting.
But not, it is forecasting, but quite a few times forecasting can be done on one element. So I'm going to forecast this price or something like that, for example. But with unified intelligence, you're taking data sources in from multiple. So you're getting the full picture of what's going to happen.
Okay.
So that's going to cause this to happen. Again, it's causal again. This is going to cause this to happen, which is going to cause this.
So the predictive analytics is simply predicting, whereas unified intelligence is predicting and then explaining what the next...
That's right. And maybe sometimes even offering what you can do.
So remedies.
Yes.
Remediations.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Which is then taken into account the full picture, not just a single part of the picture, the full picture.
Okay, that's helpful. And then Sohrab, if I come to you, because you've done a lot of work on this as well, again, in one of the ecosystems, but again, dashboards, Power BI tools, putting it up on a big screen, this kind of picture of a guy stood in front of a 40-foot wall covered in charts, basically. Why is that not unified intelligence?
I think at this point, giving a example would make sense.
Yeah.
For example, recently at a port we've developed a machine learning model to predict when a sunk is going to be suspended. So that model has taken in multiple sources, multiple considerations, which I'm not going to give away, but many moving parts. And what we've done with that data is we've kind of said, how do we present this to the operator? So we've come up with like a heat map sort of design to give them the highest chance throughout the day or the next 3 days when sunk's going to be suspended. But at the same time, we've, for example, got a weather prediction as well, which is just open source out there. And we put these side by side. We can see some patterns. So going from just one source, I would call the weather one just analytics, just one source, just giving you a chance of hard physics coded in. If it's over this percentage, trigger an alert, hard kind of coded in. But like now that we've monitored this, we can really see the difference a machine learning one makes, because at times when the weather alerts say, yes, so everything's going to go wrong, our machine learning one has said, no, it's going to be okay, because it's not just looking at the weather. It's looking at every aspect of that port and live data as well as things change. So the accuracy of that would beat the analytics one any day.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, the difference between most analytics, predictive analytics, dashboards, Power BI solutions, what you're essentially saying is they're all looking at aspects of the operation, but sort of in isolation. So they're focusing very, very much on kind of what they do.
Sorry, Toby, and also they're also all 9 times out of 10 always looking historically.
Okay.
So they are just looking at what's happened in the past. They're not looking about what's happening in the moment, what's going to happen in the future ahead.
Even predictive analytics, I suppose, traditional, it'll be. It depends whether it's forecasting, like if it's looking at historical patterns to predict forward, which is what most forecasts are doing.
Exactly, yeah. And then they'll take that historical pattern and then they'll probably just add a modifier for the next year. That's all they'll be doing. They're not taking into account every single piece of the picture.
Or changing.
Or things changing in the moment.
So the real sense is, to really simplify this again for the audience, when we're comparing unified intelligence as a category versus Power BI, dashboards, analytics, predictive analytics, which someone could say that's operational intelligence. And I often call what we do operational intelligence, right? Because it's operators use it to make decisions, okay? And operators use dashboards, operators use Power BI, operators use analytics. But the key distinction is unified intelligence is about bringing loads of different sources at different cadences, doing different things, sometimes machine learning, sometimes real-time data, sometimes physics models, sometimes synthetic data. It's bringing it all together at the same time so we can make holistic decisions as opposed to isolated ones.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And I think that is such an important point, because if you just take a static predictive analytics tool and apply it to these really complicated dynamic operations, you're not going to capture real-time information in workflows. So your intelligence is not going to update. It's not going to be as accurate. It's not going to be as dynamic. It's not going to be as useful. And I think these are really, really important points to get across and make clear. So we've now got this intelligence. The unified intelligence capability is there. I suppose the next thing I want to talk about is how we get this to frontline operators, because the intelligence is only going to deliver impact if it's acted upon. Right, and for it to be acted upon, it needs to be trusted. It needs to have good credibility or standing with the people that are interacting with it. But critically, it needs to be delivered to them where they are, in the right places at the right time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this, around how, yes, we have dashboards, but we use other methods of getting this information to frontline operators and strategic decision makers across an organization. So Sohrab, maybe you could kind of expand a little bit more around how we build the intelligence into operations.
Yes, of course. So once we get past the part that takes the longest, is developing this ontology and intelligence, we work very closely with the stakeholders, especially the operators, gaining their trust, and also the way this information will be useful to them. So even down to the wording of the alerts or the conflicts that they would like to see. And as you say, we have dashboards, but as an example, recently with a actual live operation, we got to a stage where we had the intelligence and we had dashboards, but we spoke to the operators and we saw they already had a pre-existing Teams account they were using to chat between all of the stakeholders, and we wanted to make it very easy for them to be able to interact with this intelligence.
Yeah.
So what we did was we literally just integrated the ontology or the alerts that we are generating into that Teams channel, and we just sat there as an agent or an additional person. Yeah. Just as they chatted away, we just alerted them when they needed some of the alerts, and just brought it to their attention.
And I think that point there, the speed at which we were able to make that integration kind of further substantiates the point around the power of the ontology. The way these things are built makes them flexible. So I think that's a really important point. But the point that you made just before that around trust, and as the digital twin is being built, or as the unified intelligence is being deployed and mapped across their operation or ecosystem, this notion of working very collaboratively and our mindset and how we go into these places, that's so important, isn't it? Not to, we have to recognize these guys are the experts of their domain.
Yeah, and I think that has multiple layers as well to it, because just putting a chart in front of them and say, look, we're accurate.
Yeah.
Just trust it isn't always the best way. It's actually listening to them and actually kind of for a few weeks or months actually working side by side with these operators, and just kind of seeing whether these alerts are actually making an impact, not just on a chart.
Yeah.
And then once we receive that feedback, and we can, make the adjustments to make it even more valuable. And they appreciate that. And that's how the trust is built, I believe.
And Dan, coming to you. So the old world of SaaS,
Yeah.
right, was all about screen real estate, right? Whether that was because you were selling ads or seats or whatever it was. The business model favoured user engagement by screen time.
Yeah.
And I think this point further supports the fact that what we're talking about here is a new category, because we don't care about that.
No, we don't. We don't care about that. We care about impact.
Yeah.
So as long as, like you said earlier, as long as the right person's got the right intelligence at the right time, we've done our job.
Yeah.
So if that's pushing them an alert through Teams, if that's pushing them an email, if that's them seeing the information on the dashboard, if that's them getting an SMS,
or even allowing them to make long-term strategic decisions.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. If that's them getting a situational email at the start of the day or part of the day, however they get that information, as long as that information is correct and they're acted upon, we've done our job. We're not interested in if they've stayed on the software for 24 hours a day or anything like that.
I fall into that trap sometimes because it's so hard to move away from the mindset of I need to track metrics that are usage uptime or user engagement or etc. Obviously uptime's fundamental.
Of course, yeah.
But it is, do you know what I mean? It's quite difficult to kind of move past the whole user engagement to impact.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the correct information that is accurate and offers intelligent intelligence, if you like. Something that the operator can trust and then can action upon.
Do you think what we've just said there about how it's intelligence that delivers impact, it's kind of a capability. It's sort of just there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It comes through Teams channels, it comes through your inbox, in emails, it can come through notifications on a screen.
Any means they want it to come
literally
through.
Any media. And do you think that makes it difficult for people to it's not very tangible? So whereas the old way of doing software, I'm thinking of things like Monday.com.
Yeah.
Right, everyone knows what it is. It's easy to demo. It's easy to touch and feel and understand. This kind of isn't.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's very much you don't know the value of it until you get it into your operation.
Yeah,
you can be told we can offer you this intelligence, which can do this, which can give you this ROI, but until you actually get some of this under your bonnet, if you like, you don't know how powerful it can be.
Is there like an easy way to think about it? Like if I wanted to try and, because it is abstract until it's real.
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying. Get it into your operation, it becomes tangible, it becomes real. And that is a way that we do things. Again, this is going to be another webcast, but the micromodels technology allows us to go iteratively and kind of show you something tangible before going and moving lots of different directions and so on, which is really helpful. But like, is there a way to think about it? Could it be, if someone were to think about how many different things affect this situation, if all of that was brought together and delivered to me in a text message, would that be, is that a way? Can you think of a better way to kind of almost articulate mentally or model mentally like what we're talking about to help someone understand what we mean by unified intelligence and therefore be able to apply that to their own operational environment?
It would very much depend on the context of the operation, how you would say that. But if you want to get a holistic view, would be a good way of saying it, or just going to the operator. What is your pain points in your operation, and how could they be solved? So then you can start leading down that way to gain trust with the operators as well. But you're also pulling upon the intelligence from everywhere to do that. So they're getting a full picture with an alert, for example, or something like that, which is genuinely going to be genuine.
And a full picture can sometimes shift the way you operate. Like some people might look at this and think, well, actually, this changes the way I think about my business altogether. And we've heard that said to us before.
Yeah, we have, yeah. And also, if you didn't have the intelligence there, you'd think, oh, okay, I've got this problem. Okay, I'll put a plaster on it. And then that can cascade down the line and it can cause problems for other people in the ecosystem. Once you've got the full, holistic, unified view,
picture,
your decision will be different.
Yeah.
Talking about, I'm jumping around a little bit now, but I want to touch on large language models. You mentioned sit reps in your ways of communicating this. And the sit rep is something that we're proud of in terms of one of the ways we communicate. Maybe describe a little bit about what this is. It's taking the information through.
So it's taking the correct information for the correct user. Yeah. So you might have different people within the ecosystem that some of them some of that is a bit sensitive. Mm-hmm. So it's pulling the right segmented information to the right thing. It's pulling that information into a situational report that can be 12 hours ahead, 6 hours ahead, 24 hours ahead, but that can be configured. That doesn't really matter. And then what we do, all that information is then pulled upon in a secure way and then passed over to multiple LLMs to basically reason and place into natural language some of the stuff for the reader of the system. So then they can get a full scale picture of what's going to happen in the next 6 hours. What are my problems? Because the alerts are going to go in there as well. What's happening? So the alerts will be in there as well, which are then reasoned upon.
Yeah.
So it can start to also offer some of the remedies that we're offering at the time and start to put that into a full picture for them. For like I said, for 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. So then the reader can say, this can go to management as well. So they can get an overview of what's happening in my operation today, but also it can go to the operators. So the operators can see, right, okay, 6 hours time, okay, we're going to be fine. 24 hours time, oh, okay, we're going to have this problem coming up now. We can get on top of it.
So this is an email.
Yep.
Or I suppose it could come in all forms.
It could come in all forms, yeah.
Right,
at the moment,
I know it as an email.
Most people are consuming it for email.
Yeah, so it comes through. So you can imagine opening your kind of inbox or whatever and having this sit rep. And this sit rep summarizes, at the time it was sent, the unified picture of your operational ecosystem.
Yep.
It's explained further using large language models and natural language to further explain or substantiate some of the points. But it's all grounded in the ontology, which is grounded in the operational physics of the customer and traditional machine learning models, which are providing auditable predictions. This is a really powerful thing. And then right at the bottom, it's got some recommendations. It's just looking at that horizon and saying, look, I think you could do something about this. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this?
Exactly.
Just on that, I think that's a very important point. Using the power of LLMs is up to that point, we have already used AI, like I said, with the machine learnings. But what makes that special is we are generating this intelligence at that point in time, but the LLM is taking to another level to even further check all of our alerts or conflicts to make sense or provide, like you said, remedies. And that's kind of the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
If you were to code all of that, you would have to think of every possible outcome.
Yeah.
But the LLM just takes that in and just provides all of that.
And these recommendations are wild, right?
Well,
and we've seen both sides of this. So we've seen the positive reactions to these, which has been people going, this is bonkers. Basically, they're reading this, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with large language models where people are using the phrase LLM wrapper, right? Because basically, what someone's done is they've built a product that literally is just an API to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever it is, and it's so thin. And it's so obvious. And essentially the test is, can I do this by just going to one of those LLM interfaces on my own? Can I just go around whatever's in front of me? If that's the case, it's an LLM wrapper. This is substantive. You put this in front of someone. It's got spatial and temporal context. It understands the operational physics of the operation. It's got access to highly accurate, highly auditable predictions from multiple AI micro models. It's pulling alerts that again have been generated through the logical models, the algorithmic models, and so on, and it's pulling those through and just adding context to information that's already been worked out pre-LLM. So therefore we're reducing hallucinations. These things are being used by operators that are absolutely cynical about this stuff. So they're looking at this and they're going, is this accurate? And boy, do we find out if it's not. And then it's making recommendations. It's giving opinions on what to do. And these opinions are kind of good. Like people are saying to us, well, we've used that. It's situational awareness at worst. I've just automated a decision in the port at best. But we've also seen the other side of this, right? We've seen this intelligence, especially in ecosystem environments, possibly ruffle a few feathers just in terms of how much we know. And you've experienced that with me, Sohrab. I mean, I suppose it's probably worth just touching on this, just the power that we're talking about with unified intelligence.
So as we always say when we go into these sort of meetings, is the outcome, the goal of this is to provide tools and possible suggestions for you, the operator, to make that final decision. For now, but of course, people, whether it's the media or what it is, when you get in to show this power, everyone gets a bit frightened. Whether is it going to replace my job?
Yeah.
But what we are saying is this is tools to help you and make your job easier and faster. Instead of you going off and doing your research and finding these conflicts, we're putting it in front of you so you can make that decision quickly. We're not saying this is going to make the decision for you.
No.
But it's just making your life easier.
And human in a loop is critical. It's at the centre of everything we talk about, isn't it?
100%.
Human in a loop everywhere. So as we bring the webcast to a bit of a close now, first of all, to say we've covered an awful lot of ground. So we started with unified intelligence, really kind of describing what that was, why it's a new category, why we're talking about it as a new category, different decision-making horizons that perhaps it's relevant to or most relevant to, where Entopy sort of delivers the most value. And then we went into comparing it to the kind of legacy tools. So we spoke about how unified intelligence compares to things like analytics, predictive analytics, dashboards, Power BI and so on. And that really brought out the fact that this is very much a capability. It's not something that you can see and feel and touch. It doesn't live in it does live in an app, but it's not an app, if that makes sense. So a lot of ground covered. I suppose a way to finish this webcast, given what we've spoken about, would be to say, how do we think unified intelligence is changing operations today? Like, what are the biggest things that you've seen from the deployments that we have? What have you seen and thought, okay, yeah, I kind of get this now? What were those moments for you?
Well, I'm not going to name the individual moments.
No.
But however, once I've seen the intelligence we've given out acted upon to have a real positive impact, that's what the first time that happened, when it was a real positive impact, that was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
And the feedback we got off the back of that as well, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
So when we see things like that happening, it knows our platform and we're doing our job.
Huge validation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And then we get that quite a lot. We
Yeah.
get quite a lot of validation all the time that what we're doing is working.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing is the reliance that we see that starts to build.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, people obviously, once you've had, if you like, a dopamine hit from Entopy saying that actually that worked, that gave us this alert, or that gave us this remedy, then people will start to become more trusted. So they start to become really resilient on. They need the Entopy system.
Would you call it a dopamine hit though? Because for me, I've seen it as become part of the decision-making psyche. Yeah,
but the first time that operator makes a decision off the back of Entopy, and that has a positive impact.
Oh, I see.
That first time that operator does that.
But then it becomes entrenched.
And then after that's happened, again, they'll then do that again and again, and then all of a sudden it's their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Is to rely on the Entopy unified intelligence platform.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point, isn't it? The fact that
I would take a step back just building up to getting to that stage, and it's been a learning curve for us as well, and how we deploy this technology.
Yeah, most definitely.
Even though we work with the operator, we earn their trust beforehand. Launching the day that launch comes, it's still very sensitive, because we need to make sure everything we've worked towards is going well and going correct, and we've seen how even when we launch, the operators are cautious because they've just learned their own ways of working for years and years.
Exactly.
So they're always cautious, and as the days and months go past and they come and go onto the Entopy platform, or however we give them this, we do see how this builds up for them to be at where Dan mentioned that it becomes their day-to-day life.
Of course, you're always going to have skeptics in every operation
because it's a big change.
It's a big change. It's a big change for them, and also there is still that fear around, especially like we've said it before about in the media around AI and stuff like that.
Yeah,
there is that fear that this is gonna take my job. Look at the intelligence this is giving me. This is surely gonna take my job.
Yeah.
But that's where we emphasize to people that no, we're not making. We are giving you the
Tools.
intelligence.
Yeah.
It's up to you to make that final decision.
We really do fundamentally believe of human in a loop. We really do.
100%.
None of our workflows or conversation or development or discussion ever comes anywhere near that.
No.
But we still get faced with it every day, and we have to explain ourselves and so on and so forth. But
and that's why being really transparent really helps us.
Yeah.
Being able to say, this is how we've come up with this. This is where this data is coming from, and so on. That can help gain more trust as well.
It's weird, isn't it? Because for AI to be adopted, you almost need companies to have really good soft skills and human skills, which is not something that's typically associated with AI companies, right? So it's a really important fact, and I think, you know, culturally we're very good at it. I think for me, just closing out, I think you're right with everything that you've said with regards to it does fundamentally change the way we think about things. People do become reliant on these technologies, and that is potentially a vulnerability point. It's a powerful technology. So one of the things I'm thinking about is how best do we build and form partnerships that are for the long term with these organizations? What does that look like? And it's got to be shared, it's got to be trusted, it's got to be entrenched, it's got to be embedded. So, you know, we're looking at everything and having to reshape how we think about things and how we work. But I think fundamentally the way that real world operations works is going through a seismic shift. It's not replacement, it's change. And it's change to essentially optimize for the fact that people can see everything now.
Yeah. Sorry, there's one thing I'd like to add. We sometimes get a bit of pushback from internal IT teams.
Okay.
Which can be expected because sometimes they are tasked with producing analytics. And they think that what we're coming in, they think that what we're coming in to do is to replace them. So we've had it before. We've had from say, oh, but my member of staff creates me this chart or this forecast or something like that. We're not coming in to replace that guy. We're coming in to maybe feed him some more information that he can get out of the system. That's some internal IT teams seem to give us a bit of pushback sometimes.
I think a lot of it comes down, it really all comes down to internal IT teams probably have the strongest mental map or mental model of what quote unquote operational intelligence is, which is dashboards, Power BI, analytics, predictive analytics, right? That's what they know, that's what they believe, that's what they trust. We are delivering a category that people cannot fully understand, they do not fully grasp, they therefore do not fully trust. And they don't trust it from a, is this kind of snake oil perspective? They don't trust it from a, is this going to replace me kind of point of view? They don't trust it from a accuracy point of view. And I think that, I think that's a really important point to say. But it is interesting that a friction point is internal IT teams.
That's right. Yeah, it is a friction point.
And I remember there's another company that's in a very similar space to us that says the same thing. You know, their biggest competitor is internal IT teams. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. So with that, we'd like to thank you all very, very much for listening. And goodbye for now.